All right, again, hello and welcome back. Today's webinar is Accomplishing Your VISTA Assignment. I'm Calvin Landrum along with
Eric Powell
here at AmeriCorps Vista in Washington, D.C., and we'll be your host for today again. So you guys are now on your third day as a VISTA, and we really hope that it's going well. We expect that you're participating in an on-site orientation and training during this first weeks of your VISTA service. So you're likely learning about your organization, how things get done there, maybe what you'll be doing as a VISTA member. We've seen you guys posting in the chat about, what your assignments are, what your mission is, what your goal is for your VISTA project, and they sound really fun and interesting. And you're also probably learning more about the community that you'll serve. So we wanted to start our time together going over the benefits that you're eligible for and give you some additional resources where you can learn more about these benefits.
So, speaking of benefits and questions you probably have about them, what questions do you have regarding your VISTA benefits and your conditions of service? Please use the chat box now to share your questions and thoughts. We'd love to hear, what's on your mind? What benefit questions do you have?
Yeah, let's see. Let's look around here. I got a few questions from you guys via email. That was awesome. That works too, but let's see what we can talk about today. Can you go over the student loan repayment options, says Lydia. I think we touch on that a little bit later on. In addition to going over it later on, we have multiple webinars available that have already been done on the VISTA campus by yours truly. If you listen to those, you'll hear my voice.
Definitely lots of conversation about health benefits. VISTA want to be healthy. We want you to be healthy as well, so we'll touch on the important parts of that and what you need to know.
Randall Skaggs says, how long does it take for IMG and Seven Corners to get your VISTA account active? I'm surprised that you brought up Seven Corners because we haven't had them for a little bit. But IMG is our current health benefit provider, and we'll go over that a little bit later on. We were curious about the health benefits. Everyone's curious about those benefits. Let's see, how are we supposed to keep track of our hours to prove that we are working the required number of hours? That's a good question. We'll keep that on deck for the end of the presentation. Because that's actually an excellent question. All right, what else do we got? When will the travel reimbursement be posted on the website? Are VISTAs eligible for the President's Volunteer Service Award? Oh, man. These are questions that, I'm telling you, we don't really get often, so this is great.
Yeah, these are great.
Can you explain the difference between the two healthcare options? We definitely will. Ms. Daisy Martinez. Curious about using personal leave. How will I take advantage of that if I need to? Are we covering personal leave? We'll cover that.
We can.
Yeah, cover that too.
We're adding some of these to our document, so we'll make sure to talk about them. But yeah, keep your ideas coming. We have lots to cover, but we also want to make sure we answer your questions about benefits and conditions of service during this webinar.
Definitely. Great questions. All right, so moving forward, here is what we hope you will get out of this webinar today. We'd like for you to be able to, number one, manage the VISTA member benefits you're eligible for so you can get the most out of them. Number two, get acquainted with your new community and begin engaging with them as you start working on your VAD, or if you remember, your VISTA assignment. Number three, I want you to learn how to connect with other VISTAs and show your VISTA pride. I want you to be proud to be a VISTA member, spread the word, and let everyone know, the great work that you're doing. And number four, I want you to discover different support channels available to you throughout your service. There's so many people who are here for you, ready to answer your questions and give you all the support that you need.
So thank you all for the comments you posted in the chat. As Calvin and I said, there's a lot we want to cover. We want to first start talking about the VISTA campus, which you all have already been to. The tutorial on the VISTA campus covers all of your benefits. You may have already breezed through it a couple weeks ago, and you probably checked out the living allowance section and saw that we're really serious about this poverty thing. But you may also need to use other benefits or to double-check details. We built this as a reference tool, so when in need, go back and check it out. There's also a few benefits that are not simple to grasp, and those are the ones we want to describe right now. So speaking of the living allowance, it's deposited to your account every 2 weeks, which is approximately 26 payments a year. If this is your first week as a VISTA, your first pay date will be Friday, July 1st, right in time for the Independence holiday. Get an extra hot dog or hamburger and celebrate Independence of America. Because state taxes are not deducted, you do need to determine what you owe to the state you are a resident of. we suggest you check with your state's tax office to figure that out. You can also check your living allowance statements in your my.americorps.gov account under the My Living Allowance tab. Also, as we mentioned about getting paid, you're going to be paid through direct deposit. It's the fastest and most secure way to get paid. So please make sure that you entered your bank account and routing numbers correctly in My AmeriCorps. Otherwise, your living allowance will not arrive. The routing number and account number are on your checks. The number on your debit card is not your account or routing number. And if you're confused or unsure of these numbers, please contact your bank.
Definitely, call your bank. When in doubt, always call your bank. We want you guys to get paid. If you put in the wrong direct deposit information, it can take up to 4 weeks for you to get paid. We don't want that because we know you don't make too much. All right, so moving on from that one, we're going to talk about health care, which came up in the chat. People said that's what they wanted to know about. So most of you are required to have health coverage through the Affordable Care Act, and you probably do. Others of you are legally exempt. If you have not applied for health coverage, you must first go to healthcare.gov and apply. Do that immediately. Once you have health insurance or the legal exemption, one of those two, you either have to be exempt or you have to have insurance. VISTA is going to provide you with one of two benefits. For those of you with insurance, so you are eligible for insurance, you're not exempt, you have insurance, the VISTA program will reimburse you up to $6,850 for out-of-pocket expenses, like copays, prescriptions, and deductibles. VISTA does not reimburse for the cost of the insurance itself, so we can't pay your monthly premium, but we can help you with copays, prescriptions, and deductibles. So for those of you who are legally exempt from having insurance, VISTA offers a health plan as a safety net. The plan covers emergencies, some out-of-pocket expenses, prescriptions, and other basic medical expenses. Enrollment in either of these plans is done through the International Medical Group, or IMG. So in the next week or so, the IMG will send you an email with details on how to enroll. Any questions about the benefits or which one you qualify for, you should contact IMG and their representatives can help. They have all of the knowledge about the health benefit, they are the experts, and they can give you more answers than you could ask for. You can also check out the IMG website by visiting AmeriCorpsVista.imgglobal.com or follow the link in the benefits tutorial under the healthcare tab.
Great.
Yeah, someone asked, so how do we get activated for that? We will activate you. The process of activation is actually just putting you in the service and saying, yes, this person started, all of their paperwork is in. Once that happens, your information goes to IMG, and they will get you signed up for one of those benefits. You have to call them and say, hey, I want this one, and they'll get you enrolled.
That's very descriptive information, Calvin. And on that note, one quick question came in about healthcare before we move to the next topic, and that was, if we have to have Medicaid or Medicare, how does the health care allowance work? And the answer is, if you have to have Medicaid, you could still participate in the health care allowance and get reimbursed up to the $6,850, as Calvin said. So Medicaid would still fall under having to have insurance, and you have your health insurance through Medicaid.
Yeah, so Medicaid counts as insurance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Great. So we will have time for questions and answers in a few minutes, but we want to move on to loan forbearance now. There are plenty of ways you can postpone repayment of student loans during your service year or reduce the amount of your monthly loan payments. If you chose the Education Award, you can place your federally backed student loans into forbearance, which means you do not make monthly loan payments during your service year. If you complete the year of service, the National Service Trust will pay the accrued interest for the year. Forbearance requests are made through your account in my.americorps.gov. If you select the end-of-service stipend or you have private loans, you can request loan deferment by applying to your lender directly. Economic hardship is the driving factor for deferment. Be aware that not all lenders offer loan deferment. In continuing on with this theme, there are two resources you really need to review if paying off loans is important to you. The Education Award tutorial is well designed and very informative. If you want a chance to ask questions live, then the webinar on July 7th is what you're looking for. And these webinars are awesome, jam-packed with information, so we encourage you to attend those.
Yeah, they're awesome because I do them.
Oh, yeah. If you're unable to make the July 7th webinar, we do have 2 on-demand webinars you can watch at any time. One is on the Education Award, the other is on managing student loans. The VISTA Member Handbook is also an informational resource to describe these benefits.
Definitely. All right, so someone asked us about public assistance protection. So now we're going to talk about that for a second. So the next benefit of your VISTA service is intended to allow you to access benefits offered by other agencies. If you already receive public assistance, such as TANF or LIHEAP, your living allowance and other payments from the VISTA program should not change the level of assistance that you receive. Even for most new public assistance benefits, your living allowance should not be factored in to determine the level of benefits you receive. We refer to this as income disregard. So there's one exception to this, and that's SNAP, or food stamps. If you enroll in SNAP after you begin service, your living allowance and other VISTA payments will be counted as income in calculating your eligibility. If you are already receiving SNAP or food stamps prior to enrolling in the program, your benefit will remain unchanged. So I just want to say that one more time in a different way to make sure everyone's got it. If you are just now applying for food stamps, your VISTA stipend has to be counted as income towards that benefit. If you were already receiving it, that means you had a card, you had money on that card before you started your service, so that is prior to Monday, then your VISTA living allowance does not count towards your level of assistance. So also on that note, please remember that public benefits like SNAP, LIHEAP, all those things, those are managed by state and local entities. So CNCS, AmeriCorps, VISTA, we have no authority over those. So if you have questions about those specific programs, you're definitely going to want to speak to your caseworker for advice, or just Google your local office and say, hey, I have some questions. They can help you out. They're the experts, and they know all the answers.
Definitely. We've mentioned the MyAmeriCorps website, and just to recap the benefits we discussed and where to access them, we'll show you on the screen. So once we activate you in our system, you will be able to print a letter citing the authority for what we call income disregard from your homepage in MyAmeriCorps. Look under My Service Letter. Also, your biweekly living allowance statements are not mailed to you, but they're posted here instead under the My Living Allowance link. And you can access your W-2 yearly wage statement and your 1099 miscellaneous form for filing federal taxes here under the My Tax Statements link.
Yeah, hopefully everyone's kind of familiar with the MyAmeriCorps portal by now because, they've been on it. That's where you did all your forms. Hopefully you've clicked around in there and saw what was available to you. So we've just reviewed a few of the benefits you receive as a VISTA. So always remember to refer to the benefits page of the VISTA campus for more details about any of your benefits. Whenever you guys call us and ask us for questions, that's where we go to find the answers. That's all the answers are there. They're available to you. All you got to do is dig around a little bit. So I know we just went through a lot of things. We may have generated a few questions about your benefits. So we're going to pause for a second to take some of them now. I'll ask our operator, Angel, to give us instructions on how to ask questions by phone.
If you would like to ask a question, please press star followed by the number 1. Please record your name clearly. One moment, please, for the first question.
All right, thanks, Angel. And while we're waiting for someone, let's look through here and see what we have in the chat or the Q&A. So it says, is it too late to apply for relocation assistance? Lydia, that's an excellent question. So when you were entered into service, your state office indicated whether you were relocating or not. If you moved over 50 miles to serve on your project, then you'd probably be eligible for relocation benefit, but we'd have to check with your state office just to make sure. If you have a question about that benefit, you can shoot me an email and we can figure it out. It's not technically too late, but we'd have to, kind of make that change quickly so we can make sure that you get all the benefits that you're owed.
So another question that came up was, how do you keep track of your required number of hours? Well, it's actually a two-part question. The first part is, as Vista, you do serve 365 days for the year, so you are full-time for the year. You get 10 personal days, 10 sick days, and 5 emergency days in case an immediate family member passes away or is seriously ill. But in terms of keeping track of hours, you need to work with your supervisor. They may have you fill out a specific form to just keep track of what time you come and what time you leave and what days you're requesting off. But definitely check with your supervisor, and they'll be able to let you know how do you keep track of your specific service hours.
Yeah, totally. There's no hours requirement specifically for the AmeriCorps Vista program. Your requirement to this program is 365 days of service, including your weekends. That doesn't mean you have to work on the weekends, but that's factored into your 365 days. So we don't look at your hours. We're not asking for your hours from your projects, anything like that. Yeah, Corolla says, if you don't take any of the benefits, can you get a larger stipend? I really like that question, and I like your way of thinking, Corolla.
It would be awesome if that could happen, but
that is the ad, but unfortunately that is not an option. The benefits are there for you to use. You can take them or leave them, but that doesn't affect the amount of stipend that you receive. I'm going to ask Angel if we have anyone on the phone.
There are no questions from the phone.
All right, we have currently no questions on the phone.
There was one more quick question that came up earlier, and it was quoted as travel reimbursement for business traveling, but I believe what they're asking is if their VAD requires you to travel for service-related travel, not commuting, what is that process like? How do they get reimbursed for required service-related travel?
Yeah, okay, so there's a form on your My AmeriCorps account. It's called the V81, and basically that is a form that you'll fill out that goes to your project, and that is how you get reimbursed, for any mileage that you have to do while on your project. Again, that is a process that kind of bypasses us here at HQ. So you're going to want to talk to your supervisor about that one to say, hey, if I'm traveling, what sort of reimbursement do I receive? What's your policy for your employees, and what's going to be, what can I reasonably expect? The V81 is a form that goes from you to, I believe, your state office and then your project, or the other way around. But that's something that you'll fill out. Press submit, it goes to the people that it goes to, and that's how you kind of get that train rolling of reimbursement for service-related travel.
And I see a couple more questions came in, some in the chat, some in the Q&A, but hopefully people will continue to post questions to the Q&A. One that I see that came in earlier was about child care. It's not too late to apply for child care, but you would need to go to the child care provider's website, which is AmeriCorpsChildCare.com. There's a pretty extensive application and a lot of documentation you need in order to apply for child care, but definitely check out the website and make sure that you have everything you need in order to apply, and they can let you know what the process in terms of the time frame and the amount is.
Let's see, Andy's telling us that we have more unanswered questions in the Q&A, so let's talk about some of them. Emily Coble says, where can we use our educational award? Does it have to be an accredited university or college? Yes, it does. It has to be a university or college that is a Title IV institution. And what that means is that is an institution that receives federal funds. Your education award is federal funds, so your college has to be able to accept those. There's a full list of colleges and universities that accept the education award, I believe on edaward.org. I think you can go there and navigate to the list. You can search for your school, things like that. If you have any questions about that, again, there's a bevy of resources, but you can contact us or the VMSU, and they can help you figure that out.
I see Matthew asked a follow-up question to the health care in terms of if you have health insurance and if you opt for the $6,850 Vista health care allowance, yes, you do need to keep a copy of your copay receipts, and in a couple of days, I think we mentioned on the webinar on Monday, in a couple of days you'll get an email from IMG, our healthcare provider. They'll give you instructions as to how to create a free account on their website, and there's instructions there as to how to upload the receipts and factor in how much you're requesting to get reimbursed based on those receipts.
Yeah. Let's see. It looks like someone says, I second Melissa's question, state tax. What have we got? Oh, I have a question about the taxes. Since state taxes aren't taken out, how does that affect us? What do we need to do in regards to that? So state taxes are your responsibility. We take out the federal taxes, but it's up to you to kind of determine your level of responsibility for your own individual state taxes. What we recommend is that you give your state tax office a call, visit their website, talk to a live person, explain your situation, and they can, give you pointers and let you know. Unfortunately, we're unable to give you tax advice because we are not tax people, and we would hate to give you something wrong. There's 50 states; they all do things differently. So definitely give your state tax office a call and discuss your situation. Say, hey, this is what's going on. I just want to make sure that I'm in the clear for next year. We definitely don't want next year to roll around and for you to, owe taxes and for them to be coming after you.
So I think there's a couple more questions. One question I did want to quickly answer. Shelby, kudos to you. You asked a loaded question, but we'll get the answer. If I wanted to go to school during my AmeriCorps service and use the Education Award for the expenses, would it be best to defer a loan or go through forbearance? It's a loaded question because I have to segment it out. So really quickly, number one, yes, as a VISTA, you are allowed to be enrolled in classes as a VISTA as long as your supervisor is aware and approves of the time you need for school and as long as your VISTA service comes first. Secondly, you would not be able to use the Education Award for going to school while in VISTA service because the Education Award isn't officially available to you until after you successfully complete your year of service. So you can use it to go to school after VISTA, but not while you're in VISTA. And then thirdly, would it be best to defer a loan or go through forbearance? It's up to you, but just remember we mentioned earlier, if you select the Education Award, you have the ability to request loan forbearance, which means you don't have to pay on your loans, and that forbearance is through us, the National Service Trust. But if you select the end-of-service stipend, you may qualify for deferment, but that's up to your loan lender, so there could be a less likely chance, perhaps, as long as you communicate with them.
Fine. Let's see, Alexander Mundell. If we are unsure as to whether we will go for continuing education next year or the year after, will our education award still apply? So Alex, your education award is good for 7 years after you earn it. So 1 year from now, your education award is going to be released because you're done with your service, and you have 7 years from the end of your service to use your education award. Let's see.
Oh, and there was a question. I apologize, Joseph. I know you've had a question coming up a lot, and we're trying to get to these quickly. You had a question, does being an AmeriCorps VISTA qualify me to stay on my father's TRICARE or military insurance plan? There's sort of separate in the sense that being an AmeriCorps VISTA doesn't necessarily qualify you or not qualify you to be on your father's plan. I mean, you can definitely check with your father to make sure, but being a VISTA is separate from, Calvin, help me explain this.
Oh.
being a VISTA is being a VISTA. If you have insurance through your father on your father's plan, then you can, and as long as it's also in your name, you can apply for the VISTA healthcare allowance.
Yeah, I mean, you have insurance, you're insured.
And it does not afford you a special status. So hopefully that answers it. If not, post another question and we'll get to it. We do have a couple more minutes to answer a couple questions before we continue on with the presentation, but we do want to try to answer these as best as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Taj Mavan says, on the allowance list, the lowest pay is $990, but I believe our allowance is $850. How do I see what my stipend is for each month? That's an excellent question. So if you don't know what you pay, if you don't know what you make, you can ask your supervisor or you can ask your state office. They'll give you a number. So on that living allowance list that you saw, you'll see a daily rate. That's how much you actually make. I wouldn't go by that monthly amount. That's tricky. So every 14 days, so you're paid every 2 weeks for 14 days of service. If you look at that daily rate, multiply it by 14, you'll get a pretty good estimate of what you'll make. So it'll be that number minus taxes, minus federal taxes, and that is your amount that you make. You don't get paid twice a month. You get paid every other week, and there's some difference in there. So keep that in mind.
Another question that came earlier was from Karen. She asked, what on earth is this service letter section of the AmeriCorps website? Basically, if you don't have access now, in the next couple of days, you'll have a new access to a link called My Service Letter. And as a currently serving VISTA, you'll be able to print 3 service letters, one of which is really, all of them are important, but one of them basically states that you're an official approved AmeriCorps Vista member currently serving. You might want to use that if you're applying for benefits or if you need to show your landlord proof that you're in a national service program. There's also a second service letter on income disregard, as Calvin talked about earlier with public assistance protection. And then thirdly, there is a Social Security income disregard letter. So definitely take a look at those because they might be useful in your year of service. Let's see what else.
All right. Let's see. I think we have maybe time for one more question. Let's see. What do we got? Sorry, I'm going through your list, guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
A whole lot of questions in there. Vanessa Ingram, this is an easy one. What paperwork is required in order to receive the settling in allowance? There's no paperwork. If you were approved to relocate, it is automatically factored in and will be included with your first living allowance payment. Is there a premium for the Vista Healthcare allowance? No, there is not. That is a benefit of your service, and you don't have to pay for that.
And another important question came in that we saw, and we're trying to scroll through them, but there was a question about the difference between the stipend and the living allowance. According to the terminology we use, the living allowance is what you get paid every 2 weeks. The stipend is a cash stipend at the end of your year of service that's worth $1,500. So when we say stipend, we're talking about the end of service benefit. Living allowance is your pay every 2 weeks. And they are taxed, so just be aware that when it comes tax time, you will have to put those on your federal taxes, as you said, using your W-2.
Yeah. We'll do this one last one and we'll move on. Sarah Frick says, if I need to stay somewhere part-time in order to be on site, does the relocation pay for something like that? It might be something specific to my situation. It may be, but we can answer that. So the relocation assistance is to just kind of help you cover any costs that you may have incurred while relocating. Take note that it's not going to cover all costs probably, and it's based on mileage. So what we do is we calculate the mileage from your home of record to your project site, multiply that times 34 cents per mile, and that is the amount of your reimbursement. The settling in allowance is also to help you, like it's called, like settle into your new service site. So those two amounts combined are pretty much all of the relocation assistance that we can give, and there's no additional sort of, coverage of costs for like a hotel or anything or any sort of other place that you may have needed to stay.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Keep them coming. We are going to move on, but if we have time at the end, we certainly want to do our best to help you guys succeed and accomplish your VISTA assignment.
All right, so VISTA in the community, that's you guys. So our benefits conversation, focused on you, the VISTA member. So now we're going to shift our focus back to what it is you'll be doing for your VISTA service. You'll recall that the VISTA mission focuses on lifting communities out of poverty. So let's take a look at kind of what we mean by community and the VISTA's role in it. So on the right is a poll about your level of experience in the community you'll be serving in as a VISTA. Maybe you're already a member of the community and you yourself have experienced poverty directly. On the other end of that spectrum, maybe you've had very little direct experience of the community you hope to serve. So choose your answer and be sure to click Submit so that your response is recorded. Many VISTAs come from the community that they serve in, bringing with them firsthand experience of living in poverty. They have an understanding of the challenges the community faces, as well as the assets and resources the community can draw upon. Some VISTAs with very little to no experience in the community where they'll serve, they'll first need to learn about the community, go out and explore, before they can do anything else. How can you help the community when you don't know the community? There are activities in this VISTA PSO that really help you facilitate getting to know your community. And if you're from your community, you'll get to know it in a brand new way. So let's see, while we wait for these just to tabulate, let's see what we got. It just ended. Takes a couple seconds.
I know when I was at VISTA, I relocated to a community that was only 20 miles away, and I actually didn't have any experience with my community, which was hard at first, but it really helped me to get to know them and spend time understanding what the community was all about.
Definitely. I think it's really fun to move to a new place. You get the chance to explore. You can kind of recreate yourself, be someone new. You really get to, I don't know, I just love exploring. You can walk around and see things you've never seen. All right, so let's see, what are our results?
Wow.
I am or have been a member of the community. 27 of you, that is the overwhelming response there. Great, it's so nice to see people serving where they're from. Let me see. Some people say I have a lot of experience, I have some, I have little to no. So we have really the opposite ends of that entire spectrum. We have people who have been a member of the community and people who have no experience and are just moving someplace for the first time. It's very interesting. Have some experience, maybe they've visited before, have some friends there. That's how I view that response anyway.
Yeah. And this is a great lead into us talking about community and what it means, because that's what VISTA really does in embracing community.
Yeah. So, Eric, let's talk a little bit more about what community is.
I agree. You know, we talked on Monday that one of the 4 principles of the VISTA program is engaging communities. So what exactly do we mean when we say community? Well, communities typically define themselves based on location, such as an apartment building, a block, neighborhood, people living near a freeway, etc. Also, identities or affinities, such as an ethnic, religious, or cultural group, the elderly, etc. And also, communities define themselves as shared experiences, such as a school or work group, volunteer project, veterans, and so on. Communities almost always have a culture defined as a shared set of assumptions, values, and beliefs by which they organize their lives and interact with each other. Many of you indicated in the poll that we just saw that either you need to learn more about the community or you're interested in learning more about the community you're serving. There are a lot of ways to go about doing this. So we'll look at several techniques that you can use to learn more about the community you're serving.
Definitely. All right, so the first one that we've got is, the first way that you're going to learn about your community you'll serve is something that is already underway at your project, and that's your on-site orientation and training. Your VISTA project's on-site orientation and training should provide you with a foundational understanding of the community served by the project. The on-site orientation and training gives you a sense of who makes up the community, what issues or problems the community is facing, who the leaders are, and what assets are available there. Hopefully that'll paint a pretty good picture of where you're at. It's also important, though, to understand that there are a variety of communities that you'll encounter on any given day at your project site and in your larger community. The Stanford Social Innovation Review compares communities to Russian nesting dolls, as you can see on the screen. They say, quote, communities often sit within other communities. For example, in a neighborhood, a community in and of itself, there may be ethnic or racial communities, communities based on people of different ages, and communities based on common economic interests. Think about yourself in your own situation. You probably belong to several different communities, and it's the same thing for your community, same thing for where you're serving, just on a larger scale.
Absolutely.
So your on-site orientation and training should give you a really good start to your year. So another way that you can learn about your community is to do some research, some good old research, Google things, go to the library, go out, take a walk, go see where the people are. Or more likely, to look at research that other people have done. Often, other organizations have already done research on your community, such as needs assessments or studies. So you should check to see if your VISTA project recently did an assessment, and if not, ask whether any of their community partners have. Think about the number of organizations in your community. They've probably done the same thing. So you should be maybe communicating, working together to try to build a good, clear picture. Search your local newspapers for articles that might give you a pulse on what's happening in your locale. Research websites, blogs, or social media channels that are producing reliable local content. For example, if you Google community needs assessment and the city or state that you're serving, you'll probably be surprised at how even some of the more rural communities have had a needs assessment done within the last few years. This is information that people are always looking for.
Great. And I'm glad Calvin said that, because he just talked about one of the absolute best ways to get to know your community. That's to get out into it and experience it firsthand. There's no better way to do it. In a community, face-to-face interaction is vital for establishing trust. Make sure you attend social functions such as community meetings, neighborhood gatherings, or other events do walkabouts or driving tours through neighborhoods and key gathering points for the community. Be sure to ask your supervisor, VISTA leader, or other fellow VISTAs to show you around and introduce you to key members of the community. Site visits to partner organizations and meetings with community leaders also go a long way towards building your understanding and engaging the community in your project.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I first moved to Washington, D.C., a couple of years ago, a place that I found that was great was the farmers market. There's people there who are really tied into the location, people who are doing things around the community. It's typically a more community-based environment. So that's an excellent place to go and just meet people who are actually working and serving and living where you're going to be living. So the last set of approaches that we're going to mention are generally referred to as participatory appraisal methods. These are structured activities that allow you to get to know the community better. Some methods are kind of extensive and really large and are really only appropriate if your VAD requires you to assess the community. Others, because they're interactive, sometimes even playful, can be taken apart and used for your particular needs. Peace Corps calls its approach participatory analysis for community action, or PACA, P-A-C-A. And similarly, the United Nations uses rapid rural appraisal. These are sophisticated methods for gathering information about the community and synthesizing it. Some activities are pretty simple, but very insightful. They use questions like, where do you go almost every day in town? Or what's a typical day look like? What do you do on a typical day? Questions like that. Appreciative inquiry, which is an organizational development method of David Cooperrider, uses another series of asset-based questions. Essential to all these approaches is that you ask as many different kinds of people as possible, not just the decision makers, not just the adults or the in crowd, and that you be mindful of the cultural values behind your questions. Community asset mapping as an approach developed by McKnight and Kretzmann is a more formal, somewhat academic approach. But more importantly, it focuses on assets, not on weaknesses and failure, which is a common thread here. So if it's within the scope of your VAD to do this kind of community assessment, you'll really want to take a deeper look at these methods, and the links posted in the chat are a really, really good place to start.
An important part of getting to know your community is really understanding the cultural norms that exist in it. Some examples of norms include time. How do people manage time? Is punctuality important? Is taking things one at a time or juggling many people and projects how your sponsor or community handles work? Understanding how your community deals with the clock will help you more effectively communicate with the individuals in your community and can also help stifle any frustrations you may encounter as a result of working with different views of time. For example, you like things to get done in a New York minute, but your community might feel that time is elastic. Another example of a norm is authority. Is there deference to authority figures, meaning that individuals yield to the judgment of a supervisor? Or are community members encouraged to voice their opinions, even dissenting ones, and provide feedback on decisions about the community? Another aspect to this is managing conflict, which we certainly hope you guys don't have to encounter too much of that. Do people openly disagree with authority figures, or is silence a form of protest? This norm will affect your meetings, how decisions will be made, and what is expected of you. For example, will you work behind the scenes, or will you work in plain view?
Yeah. So in continuing, with cultural norms and the community, another thing to keep in mind is communication style. Communication in general has many layers, and it's important to become familiar with the communication style norms of your community. So we have, direct and indirect, for example. In some communities, it's part of the culture to be explicit in communicating your opinions, questions, thoughts, wishes. In other cases, people simply imply their opinions. Another one is, saving face. Saving face is important in every culture. I know I've done it. I still continue to do it. But it's a question of how much. Is maintaining harmony an overriding goal? And you can see how the relationship to authority plays into this. Or do people publicly debate issues? Tone also plays a very big role here. Another factor in communication style is focus. Establishing rapport and a good personal relationship may not be essential to getting the job done. Relationships are almost always valuable, but not always essential. But in some environments, a personal relationship is a prerequisite to getting the job done. Just notice at the workplace whether people ensure that the person's health and family are well before talking about work, or do you barely get a good morning before you're in the thick of business?
Good morning, Calvin.
Good morning, Eric.
But on a continuing serious note, how do you learn what the cultural norms are in your community? First, to turn to your sponsor. On-site orientation and training, which we call OSOT, is your introduction to the community as well as to your organization. Ask your supervisor to help guide you through what the community expects. But remember, he or she may not be conscious of the culture. Discussing expectations and normal behavior will point you in the right direction. Part of the first assignment you will have is designed to get at some of the cultural norms, so use that as a jumping off point. A cultural guide or cultural mentor can also help you learn about and navigate within a community you are unfamiliar with, as well as design and carry out a community input process. Ask your VISTA supervisor for introductions to people within your organization or in the community who could serve as a partner or consultant in your work. There are very few substitutes for experience, observation, and reflection. Culture Matters, another publication from Peace Corps, is a great support in this service learning process. Next week, you will learn about creating a community profile that details many aspects of the community you serve: demographics, income, education, employment, and many others. While this assignment only touches on a few elements of a community, many VISTAs find this to be a really useful tool and supplement to cultural competency.
So, knowing that there is a wide variety of techniques you can use to learn about the community and, aware of the importance of cultural norms and entering the community, what's the best way to approach this? So public and nonprofit organizations gather community input for many reasons: to inform, to motivate, to engage their constituents. You may be asked, and maybe more than once, to gather input as part of your assignment. In VISTA's culture, community engagement is absolutely essential. We're not designing or developing as much as facilitating and supporting. We ask that you take these principles to heart. The first one, inclusion. We want you to work hard to ensure that all voices in your community are heard and that diverse perspectives are being valued. Use strengths-based approaches. That's a hard one. That means viewing the community as resourceful and resilient and focusing on assets rather than problems. Look for meaning involvement from stakeholders. Ensure that opportunities for input are authentic and intuitive rather than episodic. And finally, trust. Fostering a mutual belief in the character, strength, and integrity of all community stakeholders. VISTA strives to encourage communities in ways that see community members as partners in shaping their destinies by identifying and carrying out activities that will move them out of poverty. This also helps ensure a project's sustainability. People are more likely to keep up a project that they had a hand in, that they also had a hand in developing. We mentioned appreciative inquiry and asset mapping earlier. These are strengths-based tools to understand a challenge, an opportunity, and plan for the future. David Cooper-Ryder, as we mentioned earlier, who developed the assets-based community development, once shared a story about his parenting. On report card day, his immediate reaction was to ask his son why he had gotten a D in a certain subject. This led to his son's embarrassment, disappointment, and eventual tears. I cried too. After a while, a little more calm, he asked his son, how he did so well in the other subjects. Not only was the spirit of the discussion better, but it led to the insight he needed to be a better coach and a mentor. So take that to heart, that little story. Always focus on the positive. Look for what can be gained and not for what is lacking. This topic will be picked up in your meetups and in the forums. So please, if you haven't registered into your online classroom, make sure that you do that today. And now let's turn our perspective from outward to inward. Let's address the VISTA community, which you're also transitioning into.
And we know many of you earlier in the chat talked about community and the importance of it, so let's figure out how do we create it. We know that we're not meeting each other in person, but we also have to look at other ways to connect with each other. In your online classroom that Calvin has talked about, there's a list of your classmates, so you can reach out to them outside of the classroom. You can also use the discussion forum in the classroom to find others whose service is similar to yours or who are serving in similar communities. The Vista campus also has several discussion forums, so be sure to check them out to see what others are talking about or to post your own questions. And there's a map on the Vista campus so you can connect with Vista's leaders and alumni who are located near you. Of course, meeting face-to-face is really valuable, so you might want to organize a meetup of your own in your own town. Definitely use the Vista campus for that. Also look at Vista's Facebook or Eventbrite to get the word out. Your supervisor may also be aware of other Vista projects in your area.
Definitely. So while we're talking about your area and your maps, we're going to do my favorite activity. This is so cool. I'm really excited. Let's see where all of you are located. So you should see annotation tools on the left side of your screen. Click on the one that looks like an arrow on the far left and use it to point to where you're serving as a Vista. Let's see. Casey Jones. Ooh, that's Texas. That's where I'm from.
Texas.
I'm from Casey Jones. I'm from Texas.
Whoa.
I'm from Waco, Texas.
Who's serving in Alaska? I want to serve out there.
I wonder if they're in Ketchikan.
Ooh, Ketchikan.
Ariel.
Wow. These vistas are pretty spread out from Seattle all the way down to someone's in Hawaii, a couple people in Hawaii.
Here, we got
Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia.
I'm really excited about Texas here. Go. Daisy, Matthew, Casey. All right. Let's see. That's North Carolina. I wonder if anyone's serving in D.C. I can't tell if Siobhan Watson's in D.C. or if she's in what's that state?
Like southeastern Pennsylvania.
I don't know what state that is. I'm so sorry. I'm not great at geography. Is not my strong suit, y'all.
But this is a great way to show that, you know, there are vistas all around the country, but some of you, like, I think that's in Arizona, there's a lot of you that seem like you're serving roughly in the same area, so you can get to know each other out there.
Marissa Johnson said, I can't get my name to show up on the map. Marissa, where are you from? Rochelle says, me either. Put it in the chat. If you weren't able to get it on there, put it in the chat and, you know, and keep the discussion going.
Definitely.
This is so great. I love this. This is my favorite thing. So we have this map, but you can also connect with each other through the Vista Campus map. You know, in your online classroom by using the class roster, which is downloadable and wonderful. So, as a Vista community member, we want you to show your pride. You never know where you're going to make a connection with someone else who knows about the program. Honestly, I meet people all the time. At the grocery store, I'll see someone with an AmeriCorps shirt on. I go up and say, hey, how's it going? We start talking about our service and find out we maybe either serve in the same place, we know a lot of the same people. It's a really large community out there. So put the AmeriCorps Vista logo on your business card, and your email signature, and on your organization's website, their social media sites and brochures. You know, the more visible you are, the more support you get, you know, for your project and for Vista as a whole, which means more Vistas and communities doing the work we need to get done. The web links in the chat lead to places where you can either get Vista publications and gear to use in your office and represent Vista out in the field. Also, don't forget to take pictures and share them with us through Twitter, Facebook, or even Snapchat. You know, we may share your story or retweet your photo.
And that's so important. I was in the airport the other day and had a Vista logo on and heard someone yell, AmeriCorps, and I was like, yep, we're family. So definitely show your pride. And continuing in that theme, we want you to have a Vista polo.
Yeah.
So you can represent Vista while you're serving. Be sure to order a Vista polo shirt and lapel pin free of charge. We like that word, free. We'll send an email by the end of this week with instructions for placing your order online. But there's a couple things to keep in mind. Items must be sent to your project site rather than your home address. Also, unfortunately, we are not able to send to P.O. boxes, so be sure to have a street address. All polo shirts are men's cut, and they're a little cut boxy. Sorry, I switch that around, but basically take that account when ordering. That sometimes they're a little bit roomy, so they could be a little bit big. So take that account when you choose the size you need.
Definitely. All right, so let's see. Yeah, again, watch out for that email with ordering instructions. So we want to remind you of a few sources of support as you move further into your Vista experience. You know, we've talked about a lot of them already on this webinar. For the various benefits you have, there's all kinds of people to go to, but we want to share with you, you know, some AmeriCorps-specific sources of support. So your supervisor should be your first contact for any questions related to your VAD or your workplace. If your project has a Vista leader, and not all projects do, he or she can be a resource as well. The corporation has representatives in every single state and territory working in corporation state offices. They can handle issues related to your Vista sponsor, your supervisor, or emergencies that may affect your service. Your online classroom facilitator is also available to support you in completing your PSO assignments. Another excellent source of support, which is one that you should get very familiar with because they are incredible and are really the backbone of our support system, and that is the Vista Member Support Unit. They help with questions about your benefits, myAmericorps.gov, or when in doubt, you can reach out to them, and they will point you definitely in the right direction. If you have a question about anything, they know exactly where to send you. All this information is on the Vista campus. If you search for support, you'll find it, and I suggest keeping it where you can find it. Write down that number to the National Service Hotline. I use it every day, and I'm sure you will too.
And you guys are also a great support network for each other, so be sure to keep in touch with each other through the classroom.
Definitely.
We want to give you some reminders about things you need to do as part of your entry into the Vista program. If you have not done so already, log into your online classroom. Be sure to explore your health benefit options and make sure you have health coverage or get documentation of your exemption from the requirements. Do both of these things at healthcare.gov. Enroll in a Vista health benefit option, and remember you'll be getting an email from the International Medical Group, IMG, with a link to enroll. Also, be sure to get fingerprinted and submit criminal history questionnaire if applicable. You should have the fingerprinting materials, but if not, talk to your supervisor and they'll be able to hand those to you.
Totally. Get those fingerprints done. We said it on the first one. We'll say it again. Get those fingerprints done. Get them in. Don't wait until week 5.
So what's next, Calvin?
Well, let me tell you what's coming up next. Coming up next on Sunday, June 19th, your minute intro, how poverty is measured, and your VAD worksheet are due. Those are all assignments that are found on your Vista, on your PSO Blend website that you logged into in your online classroom. On Wednesday, June 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern, so the same time that you join this webinar, you have your first virtual meetup. Again, the info about that's going to be posted in your online classroom. On Sunday, June 26th, your on-site orientation and training inventory is due. OSOT, on-site orientation and training. We love our acronyms here.
Well, we're excited because you guys are awesome. And as we continue, we're now going to take some questions from the audience. But before we do, I'll mention the evaluation poll that's now open on the right side of the screen. As we mentioned on Monday and we'll mention today, your feedback on this is extremely helpful, so we want to improve this, but also make sure they're targeted to what you guys need to accomplish your Vista service. So please take a moment to answer the 10 questions Take a moment to answer the 10 questions. You'll probably need to use the scroll bar to see all the questions to answer them.
Totally. We love these evals. I love evaluations. All right. So while you're doing that, we've given you a lot to think about. Now it's time for, more questions if you have them. That's the excellent thing about doing this is that we get to answer questions. We actually get to, talk to all of you guys. So you can ask questions using the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen, and if it's closed, you can reopen it by clicking the small triangle next to Q&A. Now we'll also ask our operator, Angel, to remind us how to ask questions by phone.
Again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star followed by the number 1 and record your name clearly.
Yeah, and I apologize if anyone was waiting on the phone during our first question and answer. We forgot to kind of go back to the phone to see if anyone was there.
And so while we wait just for a second, I see a couple questions came in. One of them is, where is this on-site orientation and training worksheet that we talked about? I've been looking on the Vista campus and can't find it.
It is in the classroom.
Yes.
It's in your PSO Blend classroom. You remember that email you got on Monday asking you to log in? Log in there. All of the information about your assignments are going to be posted there. If you can't find it there, ask a facilitator of your room. You should be able to find them. You can ask a question, and they will definitely help you find that.
And before we go to the phones, we can answer one other quick question. This question was about the education stipend. I assume they mean the education award at the end. And the question is, can it be used to make one big payment of loans, or, how does that work? So the answer is yes. It's up to you. Once the Education Award is available to you after a year of service, you can use it all in one lump sum and pay off whatever you need to, or you can pay it in installments. You go into My AmeriCorps, select how much you want to pay at a given time, select the lender or the school it goes to, and submit, and you can keep track of all of your requests. So that would be if you select the Education Award.
Yeah. All right, so we got a question from Cecilia Morse that I actually live 24 miles from my work site at least 3 days a week. Am I eligible for mileage reimbursement? That's going to be a no. Unfortunately, we don't cover mileage reimbursements, for your travel just to and from your site. Only work-related travel would be covered, and again, you'd have to talk to your project to make sure that they'd reimburse you for that. Yeah, we're going to check on the phone. Angel, do we have anyone on the phone?
There are no questions on the phones.
All right. Marissa Johnson, is that Vista Blend? There's so many websites. Let's talk about this for a second. So you guys, let's clarify. There's 3 websites that you'll deal with mainly. There's myamericorps.gov. That's where you log in. That's where you find the things like, that's where you did your direct deposit information. That's where your living allowance is going to be found. That's where, you went and decided if you wanted life insurance or not. That's your first website. Second website is the Vista Campus. Vista Campus is basically your resource hub for your Vista service. That's where you went and took the terms and conditions. That's where you did, all of the online courses. That is where you find the Vista map. That's where you find the policies, your member handbook. All the information about your service is going to be stored there. The third website is the Vista Blend website. Vista Blend, I believe it's, VistaBlend.educationnorthwest.org. And that is your online classroom website. That is where you're going to go to complete your assignments, connect with your facilitator, connect with your fellow Vistas. That's the information that we also sent you on Monday. After our webinar, we sent you all that login info. That is for that website, and that's where you'll complete your assignments and go to find out information about your assignments. I hope that helps. But yeah, those are the 3. So you have 3 websites to deal with. And hopefully, as your service goes on, you'll see the distinction and see, oh, I go here for this, I go here for this. There's a slight learning curve there, but we have no doubt that you'll get it.
Great answer, Calvin. There's a couple of, just a reminder, please try to post your questions to the Q&A panel. We are checking the chat, but it's easier if they come into the Q&A panel. I do see one that came into the chat about who do I contact about child care questions. Again, make sure you go to AmeriCorps.childcare.com. All the information you need is there, but you also need to make sure you contact your own child care provider or secure one before they can approve the application. But all the information you need is on that website.
Yeah. Let's see. Melissa Martin says, will you be talking about how to take advantage of leave time? That's a tricky question. That's kind of up to your project. As a Vista member, you're entitled to 10 personal days, 10 sick days, and 5 emergency days. It's kind of at the discretion of your supervisor when you can take those. Just like it is for any other job, you ask your supervisor, say, hey, I'm looking to be out next week on Thursday. They'll say, yeah, that's cool. No, it's not cool because we kind of need you that day. It's kind of that same process, and your supervisor is the one that's going to keep track of your leave and days like that. I mean, you should definitely keep a log so you know how much time you have left, how much you can take, but that's going to go through your supervisor.
Calvin, I think you answered a related question earlier, so I'll ask you again since you had a really good answer to it. Someone had a question about how do we access the VAD assignment. You know how there's 3 assignments due on Sunday? How do we access the VAD assignment? Yeah, the VAD assignment. Again, that's going to be through your online classroom. You're going to go to VistaBlend.educationnorthwest.org, and that is going to be where you find your VAD assignment, the on-site orientation and training assignment, the community profile assignment, and all those things. Again, that is the one that you received the login information for on Monday. Let's see. Angel, do we have a question on the phone yet?
There are no questions on the phones.
All right, these guys are quiet. Let's see. Jessica Ignatovich. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Jessica. There isn't a service letter in My AmeriCorps, why not? Our very own Jessica Birch here answered that question for you, but it's because you have not been activated for service yet. You'll be activated in our system within a week, and then you'll have access to those letters. It's the same with the forbearance request for your loans. I think that's kind of the two things that you have access to after you get activated. But you get activated once we receive your oath, once we, make sure that all your paperwork's done, all that good stuff, all those emails we've been sending you saying, hey, get this stuff done. Once all that's completed, that's when you're activated for service. We literally go in, press a button that says activate, and then you start getting paid. It's that easy.
So thanks to our fabulous team here, there's two more questions that I apologize I missed. Some of them are complicated, but I'll read through them. One of them is, if you are using a program through your city to receive health benefits, do you still get it's actually $6,850 to help for services, and can you use a city health program in place of other insurance types? The answer essentially is yes. As long as you have your own health insurance, then you can opt for the $6,850. So it might be a program through the city, it might be through the county, but as long as you have your own health insurance through the Affordable Care Act or as part of the Affordable Care Act, then yes, you can opt for that $6,850. Again, you'll get an email soon from IMG about how to request that allotment, and you'll be taken care of.
Let's see, we've got another question from Marissa Johnson. It says, how do we enter our work hours? So we discussed this a little bit already. Vista, the program, is not keeping track of hours for you. You should ask your supervisor if they have a specific time and attendance system that they use. Do you just write it down? Some places are going to be a lot less formal, and it's just, they expect you to show up, between the hours of 9 and 5 each day, get your assignment done, and it's that simple. Vista, as a program, is not tracking your hours, so definitely check in with your supervisor about that one and see how they would like for you to record your time on your project.
Definitely. Another question about child care. I'm interested in applying for child care, and my daughter will be 13. Will she continue to be able to receive child care even though she's now 13? So the AmeriCorps child care benefit that we offer is for children who are under the age of 13 and who live with you. So once she turns 13, at least according to the AmeriCorps child care benefit, she would not be able to receive child care through us, but certainly there may be other options. But ours is the child has to be under the age of 13.
Cool. Let's see, Alyssa Shaw, I like this question. So if we're not active this week, but we're still working, will we not be paid? No, you're totally paid for the days that you've served. So you guys most of you started service on 6/13, that was this past Monday. Just because you're not activated yet doesn't mean you don't get paid for those days. It just means that you wouldn't start getting paid for those days until you're activated. So we can't pay you, for the 13th, 14th onward until your account is activated. But once you are activated, it's retroactive. You get paid from the first day that you started service. Let's see.
I see another question. This question actually is an ideal question to be posted in the chat for other visitors to respond. Sarah asks, is anyone else using what's called the Easy Labor Manager, which I guess is a system that helps track hours? Sarah set that up, and she's guessing that she's logging hours that week, but if any visitors have used something called Easy Labor Manager, if you want to post that in the chat so Sarah knows who to reach out to, that would be great.
Cecilia, good question. Cecilia Morse says, I have health care through the Affordable Care Act. Can I submit for reimbursement any bills incurred prior to the beginning of my service date? Unfortunately, you cannot. Your Vista Health benefit doesn't cover pre-existing conditions, and it's only going to cover expenses incurred from your first day of service to your last day of service. So it only covers the time that you are actually serving as a Vista member.
Are there any more questions on the phone, Angel?
There are no questions on the phones.
All right. I'm not sure. I think, did we get all the questions in the Q&A? All the things on the chat. Let's see. Tashara says, could you repeat when and where you can activate as a Vista? Oh, Candace, this is not something that you do. This is something that we do. Candace says, can you please repeat when and where you can activate as a Vista member? That is up to us. Again, once we receive all of your paperwork and your oath and all that good stuff, it goes to the VMSU, the Vista Member Support Unit. They make sure that everything checks out, and then they activate you for service. Since you're on this webinar, you guys are doing great. All you needed to do was turn in your oath. Once we get that, you should be good to go. I mean, we've checked all your forms. We send you emails to remind you. If you haven't done those forms, we'll send you more emails to keep reminding you until you get it done. We may even give you a personal phone call, say, hey, we have to do this before we can activate you. But we'll definitely make sure that all of you get activated and that you all get paid. We'll do all the follow-up necessary. It's on you also to answer our phone calls and our emails. So make sure that you're also being responsive so that we can make sure that you get paid. The reciprocal relationship we have.
Absolutely. So we have another healthcare question, which we will go into a little bit of detail, but not too much detail. We don't want to confuse you. So the question is about the time frame that it takes for the healthcare application to process the healthcare application. So obviously, we in the VISTA program don't process an actual healthcare application, but we recommend that if you don't have health insurance currently, but you need to get it, which many people do since it's through the Affordable Care Act and it's the law, we recommend that you make sure you apply for healthcare. Within your first 30 days of service, because sometimes the application process could take 2 weeks, it could take 4 weeks, but if you apply within the first 30 days, you at least have a little bit of a cushion in your second 30 days. So basically what I'm trying to say is within the next 30 days, apply for healthcare if you don't have it, so that there's time for the application to be processed, and you hopefully will not be penalized for not having health insurance.
All right. It's looking like we have made our way through all of these questions. Man, that was good. Good job, guys. That's a lot of questions. Let's see. Oh, well, I'll answer. That one's been answered privately, but we'll go ahead and get it. How do we create a Vista Blend account? Funny thing, your Blend account has been made for you. Check your emails from Monday. We sent you an email on how to log into that account. We send it to the email that's listed on your My AmeriCorps site. So whatever you've been receiving email regularly from us, from whatever you put in your AmeriCorps account, that is where we sent that. So take a look out for that. That account's been created for you. It includes instructions on how to log in. Again, if you're having trouble with anything related to your online classroom, email vistacourses@educationnorthwest.org and they'll help you out.
Any final questions? We're almost done, but we'll just wait another 30 seconds because we want to see if there's any final questions that come in that are burning and you really want to get them answered to help you accomplish your VISTA assignment.
Yeah. Let's see. We got Gary Hauser. I encountered all kinds of glitches in the AmeriCorps application process. Anyone working on improving that website so it does not create obstacles for applicants? Of course, Gary, we're always working to make things better. We're fully aware and are doing everything in our power to, make that better. We're doing a full revamp, actually, as we speak. It's been a really fun, long process for all of us here, but we're definitely aware and definitely working on that.
And Sarah asked a question about Medicaid. We know a lot of it is relocate, and if you have Medicaid from another state, different from the state you're serving in, do I need to reapply for new Medicaid? You really should talk to your Medicaid office or whoever currently holds your Medicare application and let them know that you're in another state. They would be able to advise you if you can stay on the same plan you're now or if you have to reapply for new Medicaid. But definitely check with them, and they'll be able to direct you as best as possible.
Yeah, excellent answer. All right, so that is going to wrap us up today. So thank you all so much for your participation. Again, we want to welcome you to VISTA. I wish you much success in your project and leave you with this quote from Lyndon Johnson. Your pay will be low, the conditions of your labor will often be difficult, but you will have the satisfaction of leading a great national effort, and you will have the ultimate reward which comes to those who serve their nation and who serve their fellow man. Thank you all so much. We wish you so much luck in your service year. You guys are going to rock it. We know it. If you have questions, don't forget that there are people out there who want to see you succeed, who are here for you, and who are willing to do anything it takes to help you out and make sure that you guys are headed in the right direction. All you've got to do is reach out. Have an excellent third day of service and an excellent year.
Thanks.